Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and I am back, obviously, with the Saturday live stream. And today we're going to talk about three relatively new releases. I think they all came out within the last week or so, though all of these are basically new dial iterations or plays off of existing watches, to my knowledge. So, nonetheless, it's something new to talk about, and I figured it would be worth a discussion. So, housekeeping items, the Glashütte Original 60s that I bought, I shot the review footage this morning. So I'm not wearing that today. I'm actually wearing my my G-Shock, the GW. I've looked it up. It's the GWM 5610. Because I was actually out mowing this morning because it is supposed to be really hot today. So I actually only got half done, and once I'm done with this, I'm going to go back out and try and finish. So hopefully I will survive that. But so I've got the footage, but I have not edited yet. So you'll get to enjoy all of my terrible German pronunciation probably tomorrow. I'll probably push the episode out tomorrow. It depends. I have a podcast to record tomorrow. So if not out on tomorrow, maybe today, but I doubt it, or possibly Monday. But that's really it. No pre-recorded video since the last live stream, so there's nothing really else to report about. So let me go ahead and greet the chat, and then we will get started with Omega. So Kevin, good morning. Glad you were able to make it. And Rob, good morning. Thank you for being a 99 Cent Club member. Okay, we've got three new releases I want to kind of cover here. We're going to start with an article over with Hodinkee and do the first one. I'll actually start with Omega for once instead of ending with him. And this is the new, I'm going to say new-ish Aqua Terra Turquoise. I looked at this and I thought this feels familiar, but something about it didn't, like, it looked different to me, but not completely different. And I think the reason why that is I think it was just like half a year ago, we saw the dial, this gradient turquoise dial come out of Omega. I have not gone to their website to check that, but I think we saw the turquoise come out, but it didn't look this black. And I think what they have done now is we've got this blackened bezel now, like PVD'd, and then we've got the hands and the markers and the logo. They're all like black PVD now. So it's given it a different, almost, I'd say, more dramatic look to it, but the gradient dial aspect, I believe, is completely the same, as is the two options here. So there are two sizes, is why you see the two pictures here. And in this instance, they both come on a rubber strap. Now, I have never tried one of Omega's rubber straps. I've heard they're very comfortable. If it's like their sailcloth, I would expect them to be very comfortable. So you can either get it in the 38 millimeter case, or you can get it in the 41 millimeter case, but they're both, again, they're not particularly thin watches. I'm wondering if they've got the specs summarized here, or if those are just in the main article. No, we got it here. Okay, so the bigger model is 13.25 millimeters thick, and the little model is 12, almost 12.5 millimeters thick. Not too bad but I mean, it's only 150 meter water resistant watches. The power comes from two different calibers. So the smaller model uses the 8800, the larger model uses the 8900, but they're both the 3.5 hertz coaxial movements that you would expect. The bigger one has a little bit more power reserve, about 5 hours of more power reserve. And that's really the only notable difference. They're both the same price, $7,300 US, and they are not limited. So anyway, at first, when I saw that Omega had a new watch, I thought, oh, okay, we're going to actually get to talk about like a whole new dial and everything. I was like, kind of. I mean, I don't know. Like, the discussion on this watch, I would describe as polarized to skewing negative. I actually think I'd like to see it in person, but I think the renders here actually look pretty good. I don't think it's a colorway I would go with, but turquoise has always been one of those colors that I'm not a big fan of. So like Moser has their mega cool watch. I think that was the very first watch I ever talked about when I launched this channel. Maybe it was one of the first 5, but the mega cool was like my least favorite dial that Moser has done. Like every other shade of blue or green or whatever that they've got, I all think it looks good, and like I would be happy owning it. Mega cool never appealed to me. It reminds me of menthol cigarettes, and this is I don't know. I get not quite as bad of a vibe. I always think Omega does a really good job on dials. Of course, Moser does as well, but I think this with the black PVD actually looks pretty good. The bezel being black, I think, works with how they've integrated the rubber straps. So again, if we go back, not literally go back, but if we go back up to the straps, so since they kind of latch in all the way up to the top, it kind of looks like the black is feeding right into the bezel. So I think that's a reasonable look. I've always liked the Aqua Terras as a general rule. I think they're a pretty attractive watch. Not as iconic, obviously, as the 300M. I don't know if I were to get another Omega that I would get an Aqua Terra per se. I still kind of lean towards the Constellation as an interesting design that just appeals to me in general. But if I were to get another dive watch from Omega, I'm pretty sure it'd be an Aqua Terra and not another 300M for a variety of reasons. The price isn't as bad as I thought it might be, the $7,300. But we're in a depressed market right now, so I think a lot of people will probably be off put a bit by it, but I don't think it's an unreasonable price for an Omega. I think the main takeaway is it kind of falls into that summer watch vibe thing, even though, again, I think it was like December of 2024 that they launched the first of these turquoise watches. It's a watch that I struggled, and that's why I want to see it in person, but from the renders, it's a watch I struggle to imagine works in a lot of situations color wise. And so do you want to pay $7,000 for a watch that you only want to sometimes wear because the colorway doesn't go with a lot of, situations that you might choose? I don't know. Depends on what your lifestyle is, probably. But it's just one of those things. So anyway, okay-ish. There's nothing new about the design here. Do I wish it came on a steel bracelet as well? Not really. I've not tried the Aqua. I need to take that back. I have tried on the Aqua Terra bracelet. I haven't worn it for any significant period though, so I don't have strong feelings on if it's good or bad. I've always taken it as better than the 300M, which is an archaic bracelet that I think is extremely uncomfortable, given the price point after having owned one for quite a while. But I don't know, the texturing on the rubber, I'm not a huge fan of the way the strap looks, even though I think it would be really, really comfortable. It's just the basket weave pattern I just find a little odd, but it does give it some visual interest. So anyway, not my cup of tea, but I think it's okay. I don't know that I'd go so far as to say it's an improvement over the last Aqua Terra turquoise dial. I just think it just gives you another option. So I hate being indifferent, but I'm relatively indifferent to the way it looks. Underachieving Watch Collector has joined us. Good morning. Welcome to the live stream. Joel Bolt as well. Welcome. Watch looks nice. I'd never buy though. That's, Joel Bolt, if I did it your way, I could save so much time getting through the live stream by just basically one sentence. Maybe that's a stick I could try. 1 second reviews. But then everyone would go, you can't review a watch. You didn't wear it. And I'd be like, all right, I actually meant 1 second first impressions. But that's too much. That's not nearly as elegant off the tongue. Koji, welcome to the live stream, and thank you for being a club member. Looks like an ideal watch for a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. I hadn't thought about that because I don't see Jacksonville much. So yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's one of those things that yeah, I could see that. Actually, that's going to come up because I gotta criticize the issue with K-State a little bit. With our next watch. This time all the articles are linked in the video description, so you can actually go and read them. I don't read them to you. This is not story time with Dennis. So Glashütte now, their 70s chronograph. So they've done a variety of weird's not the right word, funky. Yeah, well, they use the word funky in this description too, so I kind of feel like I'm just stealing their words, but I probably am. But colorways, they've done a bunch of funky colorways. I think last year, we talked about the watermelon one. I think it came out last year. So anyway, we got a couple new ones. So they've got a plasma and they've got a fusion, is what I'm trying to say it right. Glashütte calls these. This is the plasmas, the purple one. So okay, square. This is their square case shape watch. The 70s is in the vintage line, currently in the catalog. They have some very staid, like boring, more traditional is the right word. Traditional colorways as well. But this gets you pretty much everything you would expect out of the 70s chronograph lineup. So you've got the pano date, and again, it's the same. It's the patented Glashütte pano date that everyone loves. And this is a bit. Hopefully, I've zoomed in enough for those of you on a phone, but you can see up close that the pano discs are on the same plane of existence. That is not something you see from most any other Panomatic or large big date watch. The case in point would be Langenzone, which they operate on separate planes, and it's very obvious. And that's off-putting to a lot of people that they want that symmetry. So Glashütte gives you that symmetry. You've got the power reserve indicator actually is kind of nestled. I didn't notice it at first, but it's nestled in here with the running seconds, and then you've got pretty much everything else that you would expect. I'm trying to remember what exactly this disc does. I don't know all that. I'm actually not all that familiar with the layout of the 70s because I've only ever really looked like if I was considering to buy a 70s, I've only ever really considered the 70s without chronograph features because I'm not really into the thickness is what puts me off. This is over 14 millimeters thick. And again, chronographs are often thick. So we are to expect that. It's powered by the 3702 movement. It's a pretty impressive movement. It's got 70 hours of power reserve on it. And these are not cheap. They are 17,000 euro. If you want it on the bracelet, if you're willing to get it on strap, it's going to be closer to 16,000. I think it's 15.8. But the dimensions are 40 by 40. So that is the size of the 1921, the original 1921 from Vacheron, but 14.1 millimeters in height. And again, it is a chronograph, so it is expected to be significantly higher in thickness than what you would otherwise achieve. But price aside, and the price is high. Like these are gonna. I don't think these are limited. Let me do a double check. When I went over this, I couldn't remember. Okay, they are limited to 100 pieces. Okay, so you probably won't find these gray. I reckon if you want to wait, you'll be able to find them used if you want to save some money, because I don't imagine these are going to hold at the 17,000 euro price point, just because it's a pretty unique look that a lot of people aren't going to love. And again, I don't know of really any Glashüttes that hold value. So normally I'd say just look for it gray. If you like the design, but you don't like the colorways, you can look gray and you can find a variety of things. But I think, I think you probably wouldn't struggle too much to find, if they're making 100 of each color, to find one of these on the secondhand market eventually. I do not like the purple. Actually, I think the purple will sell better. But again, I can't help but get K-State vibes out of it, which is one of the universities here in Kansas that was rival to the university I went to. And I'm not one of those people that makes a big deal about those sort of rivalry things as a general rule. However, I'm going to go into a little story time here. I actually, we have an employee where I work who is retired now, and we're having a retirement party for them on Monday. And the email went out from his direct supervisor that said, he is a big K-State fan. Please wear purple. It would mean a lot to him. And I went to her on Friday and I said, I am not wearing purple. I actually do not own a single piece of purple clothing anywhere. I do not own purple. I don't own a purple watch. I don't own a purple shirt. I don't have purple socks. I do not have, like, nowhere. I have no purple clothing. I never have, to my knowledge. Maybe when I was a kid, I had something purple. I don't think so. So anyway, just not a colorway I go with in general. The green I actually kind of like. It reminds me a bit of pistachio, but looking at these various images that have been provided over on the Monochrome website, it looks like it's a little too yellow to be a true pistachio, and I would prefer this to be more of a green like the Breitling Premier or the Rolex pistachio. I think those are better looking dials. This just a little too yellow. So again, same issue as I ran into here with these Omegas we talked about. This colorway doesn't go with a lot of stuff. These colorways also, I feel, are very playful and fun, but general use-wise, they're not very flexible colors. So do you want to pay 17,000 euro for a flex? I mean, it's basically, in euros and dollars, I think are pretty similar right now. So it's basically 10 grand more than the Omega, and the Omega is already an expensive watch for a sometimes watch. I call these sometimes watches. I think the power reserve might irk some people. It being with the running seconds, I don't think it's particularly irksome to me. I think they blended it in very, very well. But I mean, I suppose it may frustrate some people that it disrupts the symmetry of that subdial because everything else is pretty well balanced. But anyway, it's an interesting brand, and I always thought this model line was really interesting. I don't think they currently produce 70s that are not chronographs. I think everything currently in production is a chronograph, but they have made time. I was going to say time only. They might be time plus date, but they have made non-chrono versions, less complicated versions. I think those are very interesting, better visually to me. So I would say if you like this shape and you're kind of like, I don't want a Santos, it's too common, and I ain't buying a Cubitus. So what's my choice? I'd say take a look at this at the Glashütte now 70s. I think you might find something that you would like, but probably not these. But it is what it is, I suppose. So anyway, another, it's okay. This one, I don't like the colors nearly as much as the Omega, but I didn't really care for the Omega color either. So I'd say I put this a mark down. The price really hurts it quite a bit. That's a pretty demanding price for, it's smart to do them limited because there's not going to be huge demand, but the price is pretty steep for this watch. It's not precious metal. Junior, hello, greetings. Oh, from Michigan. Well, hello back to you. Hope things are going well in Michigan. I've not been to Michigan in about a year. Joe Bolt, price is nuts. Yes, pretty aggressive. Now, Glashütte's pricing is not, as a general rule, cheap, but normally in the equation of doing the math, it's, you know, like watchmaker hours per, you know, how many dollars per watchmaker hour. They're one of the better bargains, or they were like kind of during the start of the pandemic. I was going to say pre-pandemic, but I think the analysis that was done was during the pandemic. I don't know how true that is anymore. In fact, if I go back to the images so you can see it, I don't think this is a great shot of the movement, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. But for example, you can kind of see the swan neck regulator here of the balance cock. So hand engraved balance cocks from GO are done sometimes. They're done, I think they're mostly done on the Pano line. Maybe some of the Senators, maybe all of the Senators nowadays. But like when I had a Panomatic Lunar, it had that hand engraved, just like how Longo likes to do it. But my GO, and mine is a 60s, but it's in the vintage collection now. My Glashütte 60s does not. It's like this, as near as you can kind of see it. Skeletonized rotor is the same 21 karat gold weighted rotor. You can see the double spiral here on the, I forget the name of this wheel. It converts the winding. I have it in my review. I wrote it down, but I forget the name of it because this is the layout of this movement. You know, 3/4 plate, Glashütte striping. All this is basically the same finishing approach they take to their other vintage model, the GO 60s. But I mean, it's nicely finished and all of that. I mean, you can see some beveling and stuff going on, but it's just, I mean, it's very expensive. So Koji says, wow, you've taken it even further down the anti-purple road than I have ever. The GO looks more lilac. I mean, if you want to try and gussy up the name purple, you can call it lilac. And I suppose we can call this, I mean, they called it fusion, but what's it fusing other than green and yellow? What is chartreuse? Okay, look, I don't know color. So, I mean, I know like basic color. Is chartreuse green or is it yellow or is it another color? I don't know. I know whatever it is, I've always thought it was the wrong thing. So, but now I just don't know anymore. So I don't know what we could call this, but you're right. Lilac would probably work with this. This is not K-State purple. It is too light to be K-State purple. But I like some things purple. If you remember the red grape, it's called red grape, I think, by the community, but the red grape Oyster Perpetual, like that they ran up until 2019. I almost bought that watch. That was back when those sold for less than they do retail. And I ended up getting a green one instead. But because ultimately, even though I really like the shade of red grape and the way the radiant dial played with the light, it felt 2K state for me, and I couldn't do it. Underachieving says Dennis could never be a Vikings fan. It's hard for anyone to be a Vikings fan. I was going to make a joke about that when we were talking about the Aqua Terra about the Jaguars, but I then thought that I don't want that many downvotes. I don't know if there are a lot of Jacksonville fans or not. Again, I just don't. It's just not a team that gets talked about a lot around here. Obviously, again, I am wearing one of my Chiefs shirts today, so obviously it's not a. But I don't make those general. Like I'm not like anti-blue and orange because of the Broncos or anything. So in fact, I have a number of orange pieces of clothing because I did my grad work was at Syracuse in New York. So. And their color is orange. And KU's is, for those that don't know, it's red and blue. Very, very traditional college colors there. So, Koji is saying both. It's yellow/green, comes from the liquor color. Oh, okay. I don't know anything about that. And obviously, hence why I asked the question. And Junior says the counterweight on the second hand would bug me on the Geo. The running the chrono seconds. Yeah, that's not something they do on a bunch of their watches. I don't think. I'd have to look some more, but yeah, most of their watches are more refined than that. That is a curious choice that some brands do. Is they have those really creative counterweights where they'll do like almost an emblem or that's their logo, their double G logo. So that'll be what's embossed on the crown. If you get pin buckles from Geo, they usually have that. Why is it not a G and an O? Probably because it would look ugly. I don't know. But yeah, it is a little weird. It wouldn't bug me because it's so small. My eye wouldn't really catch it. I'd probably be bothered by this where I'm moving the little hand, the power reserve indicator being nestled in there. I don't know. I don't think the power reserve would ever bother me. I think it's too well blended to be annoying, in my opinion. But I could definitely see why some people, I bet when it powers down, it gets wider and wider, and that might be more obnoxious. But sometimes that's by design. They could do that to try and encourage you to keep the watch wound. Long Zona does that when their power reserve indicator, when they came out with it originally. I don't know if it was it's not on all the watches, but when it came out on the Longa one, I heard this on on a podcast that had done some research on the early Longas. They had noted that the designer of it, it's exponential. So if you ever let a Longa one wind all the way down, when you start winding it up, it takes forever before you start seeing that power reserve move, the indicator. And as you do it more and more, fewer twists, move it more and more. And that, I heard on that podcast, was by design. They did it that way because the watch runs better when it's got like a 3-day power reserve, but it runs better the more power that's in it, more consistent, more accurate. So in order to kind of psychologically get you to keep the watch wound, they made it so that when you're like halfway down on the power reserve, it's only a few twists to get it back up. And so you start to see it drop more. And the thought is, oh no, my power reserve is already below half. I need to do it more, even though in reality, you're only like a third of the way down on the power. So it's a manipulative strategy that they did to try and psychologically make you go, I don't like the visual look of the power reserve indicator drooping down low. I need to get it back past the midpoint. And that way you try and keep it wound. Does it work? I don't know. I will say having one, you do definitely notice it. It does not take a lot of twists to go from half to full, but it takes a lot to go from empty to half. So it's just one of those interesting things that they do. Okay, so we talked about the Omega Aqua Terra, pricey, $7,300. We talked about the Glashütte 70s chronograph with the weird colors, super pricey, 17,000-ish, euro. So let's end with something much more affordable, but you could still argue is too pricey for what it is. Depends on your perspective, of course. And that is Seiko Pepsi. Who doesn't love a good Pepsi? Well, we know Tony, who's been on this show on the panels a few times. He hates Pepsi designs like the Rolex GMT Master 2 and that sort of bezel, but he is wrong. The community loves those Pepsi looks. So Seiko apparently decided to be literal and actually do a collaboration with Pepsi. So this article's with a blog to watch. Again, there is a link in the video description. And so I have mixed opinions about it. So before focusing on the pictures, I want to note, like, these are they're different models. Like, so the silver one here has got, they're both Seiko 5 sports, but it's a day date with a dive watch bezel, and it's 38 millimeters in diameter. The black one, I think, is 41. We'll double check that. I think it's 41 millimeters in diameter, and you can see there's no day. It's got a GMT hand, so this is a GMT watch. It's got the 24-hour bezel that I think people more associate with the Pepsi design inherently, and it's got the Cyclops over the date. Also, bracelet on the silver one and black rubber strap on the black one. So overall, the differences are, so the silver one's 38 millimeters, 44 millimeter lug to lug, 12.1 millimeters thick. And then the black one is, it's not 41 millimeters. It's 42.5 millimeters. 46 millimeter lug to lug, and it's 13.5 millimeters thick. It also, you can see it's black. So they've indicated it's a hard coating. I reckon at the price point, it's not DLC. It's probably some form of other form of PVD would be my guess. Both are protected by Hardlex crystals, which is common for this line of Seiko 5. They're both powered by 4R movements, obviously different movements because one is a GMT and one is not. They come in very fun packaging with these little cans. That's my favorite part. I'm going to, just up front, my favorite part is they come in these cans, and which would be a neat way to sort of display the watch. And they have display case backs, but as you can see, they've got like Pepsi logos obfuscating a lot, like straight out of Grand Seiko, which, hey, I mean, they're the same corporate overlord, where you can't really see much of the movement. Not that there's much to see with a 4R. So they are limited, but they're limited Seiko. So they're limited to 7,000 units each. And the pricing is different. So the smaller silver dive watch looking one is $400, or it's $395 technically. And then the black one is $550 US. So, okay. My general thoughts. I think the black one just looks better overall. I don't know on the black coating if you're going to be worried too much about scratching it or not. Like, changing out a strap on my DLC coated Moser have scratched the coating. So eventually it'll probably deserve to be refinished. I masked it with a permanent Sharpie. So I'm very clever, obviously. Permanent Sharpies, incidentally, are different than regular Sharpies. Do I even have an example? Not here. Sorry, I was looking. I keep a Sharpie up above my desk, but just a regular Sharpie. There are actually, no one cares about this, but it's a live stream, and I'm now running down a path here. There are red label Sharpies. They're the print of the Sharpie. Here, let me just get the black one out. So this is what a normal Sharpie, when we got it now, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's Sharpies with Dennis. What are we doing here? So that's a normal Sharpie, but instead all this text is in red. Instead, those are the permanent Sharpies. And the permanent Sharpies, when you use them after they dry, they're permanent. Like, they're permanent on metal, permanent. So like it takes a certain temperature to kind of, or you can use certain things to, dissolve it, but you won't be able to just like spit on it and rub it off. So FYI, your Home Depots and Lowe's often have those Sharpies. So there are better Sharpies than just regular Sharpies if you need to permanently mask something. And it works pretty well with DLC. At least it worked pretty well on my Moser near the lug. So, all right. But I think this one visually looks better overall. I've never been a big fan of the Seiko silver dial. It's a little too, I heard someone else once describe these sort of dials as unfinished. Tudor's silver dial is the same way for me. I like silver, but not this silver. Again, I'd like to see it in person to get a better sense of it. But overall, I just think, outside of the bracelet argument, where I think, Seiko's bracelets are so, at this price point, are so cheap that it's probably better on the strap anyway. But the big old Pepsi text on the strap, I'm not enamored with. Otherwise, the branding, I think, is pretty clever. It's clearly there, but it's not overly in your face. I actually think it's better branded on this on the silver version than it is on the GMT. But both are, I think, respective proper fonts at some point in Pepsi's history. The back of the watches, who cares? But again, that's fun, and it's fine to stick it in. Having them stored in cans to be shipped with, these are actual real cans, I'm assuming, but that was pretty clever as well. It's the strap kind of off-putting. It's even got a little Pepsi logo at the tongue in there. Oh, they got a close-up of it so you can see it. So yeah, it's like it's okay as collaborations go. I think it's pretty well executed. Would I pay $400 to $550 for a Pepsi collaboration from Seiko? No, but I also don't think that you're going to have to pay full price, given they're making 14,000 total of these watches. Again, it reminds me of the SRPK 17 when that 50th anniversary came out, and they made 15,555, and collectors were insistent. I harp on this because I'm wrong so often in watches. I like being right. That they were going to sell out. Those are still not sold out. You can still buy those new, because 15,000 is a lot of watches, and so is 14,000. And even though it's affordable, how many people love Pepsi so much that they would buy this? They're definitely not buying it because it's a Pepsi bezel on both models, because there are tons of Pepsi bezels out there. Like every, there are micro brands galore that cloned that look, not to mention other big brands that did. It's a commonplace design. So, but this one, I actually like. I wouldn't mind wearing this one. I think it looks pretty good overall. It's just, it's a true Pepsi, both in collaboration branding and in the bezel work. I think it makes the most sense to have the Pepsi in a GMT format. I think the black's attractive. I think the handsets all work. Everything else is basically what you'd expect out of Seiko 5 Sports. I like the crown position at the 4 o'clock. I think it's very comfortable. And I have a Seiko with that. Actually, I've had Seikos with that approach. And I just think overall it's a decent look. The only thing I don't like about the black one is the strap. I just wish it was a plain strap, but I still think doing rubber is probably the right answer in this instance. Silver one, I mean, it's nice looking. I just don't really like the dial is the problem. I just don't like the silver dial on it. But full tip of the hat to them. It definitely mimics the can, like the silver aluminum can. You do very much get that vibe with it. So anyway, that's my thought. What do you guys think? Well, Koji thinks it actually says Pepsi on the dial. Well, Koji, it's a Pepsi collaboration. You've got is this the current font of no, I think the current font's the black one. I'm not sure. See, the less italicized version. All right, so the silver one's doing this can. I feel like this is the 80s can. Because when I see this, my initial reaction is to think it's Diet Pepsi, but that's not the proper can for Diet Pepsi. And then this is what I always think of, is this style at this point. I've seen this branding more, or I feel I have. Or maybe I just remember, it was during my more formative years where everyone just bought Coke anyway. Like, I don't know anyone who ever wanted to choose Pepsi unless it was on sale. So anyway, and it's fine. Price isn't absurd. I do think it's a little odd of like, I see where Seiko would be like, let's do a literal Pepsi with the brand. One of the things I do want to note, because again, I don't read the articles to you. Link is in the video description, so you can go read the article. But a part of it that I think David wrote that it definitely had his snark. Yeah, David Brendan, who I feel is a very snarky watch journalist. He wrote an interesting thing about how they were marketing it. So this is what they noted: a collaboration. And he notes between Seiko and Pepsi, a collaboration that transcends time and celebrates culture. And so he kind of goes on about how he's not really sure how Pepsi has contributed to culture, other than being a famous, sugary beverage, what culture there is. And he actually prefers Pepsi to Coke. So anyway, I just thought that was very amusing. I think it was 2 live streams ago, we talked a bit about how I really have questioned. It was in the context of Grand Seiko, but Seiko and its attempt to tell a story, and that's an example of like, is this really proper storytelling? It's like, this isn't even the sound, the sunset against the west slope of Mount Fuji. This is Pepsi, cultural icon. When was the last time you saw someone walking around with a Pepsi shirt on? Like, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. So it's just one of those things. All right. Let's see. Junior says, if I drank Pepsi, I might consider it. Yeah, if you're not into the beverage at all, I think this is a really hard sell, given Pepsi is right there on the logo of the watches. John says, nice to catch you live. Well, I'm glad you were able to do it. Koji says, research the history of Pepsi. They did some absolutely wild stuff in the past. I remember some of the Pepsi ad campaigns. Pepsi was one of those. If you're into video games, there's a thing that was, and still a lot of times considered as going on, and probably always will, as long as there's more than one manufacturer, but it's called console wars, the console wars. And back in the day, you would see these consoles, like you get really invested in the ecosystem, and it's difficult to jump from ecosystem to ecosystem. Nowadays, that's more so because your friends are on a particular ecosystem. So like when you want to go and play in groups and stuff, people being on the same platform mean that's a greater ability to do that. But in the past, it was these things were expensive, especially if you were a kid. The games were expensive. You couldn't put the games in different systems, so your catalog was tied to your console, and et cetera, et cetera. So you'd have things like Sega had a campaign of Sega does what Nintendo don't. This like real like calling out Nintendo. Is that sort of edgy? Pepsi, back to our tie-in and what Koji said. Pepsi to me has always been like that, where I remember there's a famous ad campaign that they did where Coke had advertised, I believe, that about how much Coke, like for every one can of Pepsi purchased, 5 cans of Coke are purchased or something. And so Pepsi came out with an ad where this kid goes up to a vending machine and you see him put in money and get out a Coke can, and he does it again and again. And he stacked up like the 5 cans of Coke so he could reach the top button to hit the Pepsi. So Pepsi's always been cheeky in their own way because they know that they aren't the most popular beverage brand. I remember this was decades ago. There was an analysis of where Pepsi was more popular than Coke. I only remember Israel. Israel was a country where I thought there were 2 countries, but the one that stuck out to me was Israel. Pepsi was more popular. But anyway, in general, that is not the case. But just an example of their campaigns. And they've had campaigns that have blown up in their face too. John says, SNL, no Coke, Pepsi. Koji says, no fried chip, cheeseburger. I apparently have not seen this SNL skit to know what you guys are doing. Koji adds, technically you could have won a Harrier jet if you had enough Pepsi points back in the day. Big court case. Yep, that was an example of an ad campaign that blew up in the face of Pepsi because someone did actually get enough of the tickets to get the Harrier, and then Pepsi didn't honor it because it was a joke. But they didn't say that in the ad, and yes, it did end up going to court. RC Cola is still a big deal in the Philippines. I've not had RC Cola in a long time, but in fact, I don't even know if the store I go to sells it, but you used to find it around pretty readily. Coke and Pepsi are the big players. Dr. Pepper. Now we're talking beverages. Dr. Pepper, I think depending where you are, who handles the bottling varies. So around here in Kansas, anytime there's a sale on Pepsi, the sale applies to Dr. Pepper. But I've heard that Coke does some stuff with Dr. Pepper as well, but it's not in my area, so I don't know how true that is. Obviously, 7-Up brand is its own brand. So, and I actually buy 7-Up brand a lot. I don't buy 7-Up much because for me, 7-Up is the beverage you use when you're sick. But they sell Sunkist, and Sunkist is the one orange soda pop that's caffeinated that I know about. So I prefer it to Fanta, which is a Coke product. And I think Crush is the Pepsi product, where they don't put caffeine in their orange pops, but 7-Up does. And I'm not going to say I'm addicted, but let's just say that I don't drink pop without caffeine. So just one of those things. Don't forget Tab. You used to be able to find Tab I don't know who bottled Tab. I think it was a Coke product. But anyway, it gets all very, very confusing. But RC, I always liked RC. Actually, I liked all the colas. Colas all have you could tell them apart, but they still have a similar flavor profile. So I never got all hung up when it'd be like do you have, you ask for Coke at a restaurant, they say no. Are you okay with Pepsi? I get why they have to say it like that. But I usually say yes. So sometimes I'll shift over to Dr. Pepper. I do not drink Mr. Pibb. If they don't have Dr. Pepper and they offer Mr. Pibb, I'll take Pepsi instead, or Coke. If they're selling Mr. Pibb, they're going to sell Coke. So okay. We've solved the world's soda pop issues. I'm saying soda pop incidentally because here I say pop, but I find most people don't, and they find it off-putting if I don't say soda. So I'll say soda pop is a compromise. Underachieving says, what beverage will Dennis drink after mowing the lawn? Dennis will drink what he's already got out. Dr. Pepper Cherry, 0 sugar. Because what I buy, I don't drink sugary ones anymore. I gave those up, but a long time ago. I buy what's on sale. I'm that cheap. So I buy name brand, but whatever's on sale. So Pepsi was on sale, so I have Pepsi Zeros and Dr. Pepper Zeros apparently. And when Coke's on sale, I buy Coke Zeros and Cherry Coke Zero. I tend to get the Zeros over the regular diets. I like the more classic tastes on both brands. So yeah. And when 7-Up's on sale, I get Diet Sunkist. So there you go. You know more about me than you ever wanted to. Coach says he's going to enter the Wayback Machine and find a bottle of Surge. I vaguely remember Surge. All the way up through high school, I drank regular sugary pops. I don't. I never cared much for Surge. It's like Mountain Dew. I'll occasionally get Mountain Dew just to remember, but I don't really like Mountain Dew a whole lot. Hagfish says Coca-Cola UK owns Dr. Pepper, but the USA Dr. Pepper is different ownership. Oh, that would explain some of the stuff. And Junior also uses the word pop. It's dying out. Social media, YouTube, and all the mass global communication is letting soda win out. There are fewer and fewer of us pop people. Like here, even in Kansas, like back like in the 80s, other than St. Louis, the Midwest was pop. St. Louis said soda. So people who grew up near St. Louis tend to say soda. But now soda it's encroaching everywhere. It's one basically. So that's just all those of us who grew up, because I was born in the 70s, we still say pop because it's just because we're old. We say pop because we're old. Hagfish says, I used to be big on sodas. I could finish a Dr. Pepper 2-liter in a day. Last May, I got operated with my gallbladder removed, and now I don't drink sodas anymore. Okay. Well, I still do drink sodas, but you probably adapted. Yeah, he says he doesn't miss them anymore. Why are we talking about Dr. Pepper? A fair question. We're talking about Dr. Pepper because we were talking about the Pepsi collab. Thank you for bringing us back in. It's Seiko. Yes, as Koji had noted, it is Seiko's fault. They came out with this watch, this collaboration, and we started talking about the fact that they say Pepsi on the dial. And the reason why this became important is because all the way back up earlier in our live stream chat, Junior had said if he drank Pepsi, he would consider the watch. So I've tied it all back together. If you don't drink Pepsi, why would you wear this watch? And it makes sense that Seiko did the collaboration with Pepsi because of the famous Pepsi bezels, but it led us down the rabbit hole of other pops people might drink that then they would be willing to wear on their wrist. Because other than the cleverness of the bezel being nicknamed the Pepsi, who cares enough about Pepsi to want a watch like this? Some people, I'm sure, but as we all know, Coke is more popular. So there you go. It's all tied back together, and that's it. I don't have any other watches to show you. I only have those three. Again, my Glashütte Original 60s review will probably be out tomorrow. It's filmed. I need to edit it, see if I made any issues that I need to fix, other than my terrible pronunciations. I think I'll put a disclaimer apologizing up front for all my bad German pronunciations, because I still don't even know if Original is the proper way to say that brand name. But other than that, I will plan to be back next week, and I'll just close out with some of the chat stuff going on. So let's see. Hagfish says, I would have bought this if, he means this Pepsi watch, if Seiko used the 6R movement in it, but this Pepsi collab watch has a 4R movement. That said, the Datsun collab, they used the 6R55 movement. And then he asks if I've heard about the Datsun Seiko collab. Or Datsun, right? Datsun. That's how we always said it around here. I did hear about it on a podcast, but I haven't read anything about it. So so you didn't have to see my terrible typing. I was trying to type it up to find it. I knew someone with a Datsun. Again, I was in middle school maybe, and a friend of mine's dad, I think, drove a Datsun. But what a weird collab. I will say these watches actually look pretty nice. Like this one with the racing strap, the rally strap, I should say. It looks pretty good. I guess I can push. I've muted my computer so you don't hear it. So there, hopefully you can here. Let me get rid of me. So it's got the car. I don't, other than vaguely remembering someone having an old Datsun growing up, and it's like the only one I ever saw. I don't, like, culturally, I don't have any ties to Datsun, but this does feel like a collaboration more in the spirit, more like respectful to the, this is all sounding terrible because now I'm sounding like I'm dogging on Seiko, like they didn't do a good job with the Pepsi collab. Let me put it this way. I like the look of these watches better. I think it's embraced the concept of the brand better, whereas the only thing going for the Pepsi is the colorway. And I think there's an actual cultural aspect to Datsun that probably appeals to certain people versus Pepsi, which is a mega corporate brand and it is a part of a lot of people's lives, but there's not no emotional attachment to it. That's probably what I would say. 6R versus 4R, I don't know. A lot of viewers have told me that they don't like the 6R movement, that it doesn't have the robustness of the 4R, and you're not exactly getting much more in the way of accuracy or anything else. So I don't know how true that is. I've never owned a 6R movement, so I don't have a personal opinion on it. But Hagfish does say he thinks the designs look wicked. I like all three of these looks, actually, all of these that they're showing off here. And Koji also likes the design. So, yes. Okay. So the Datsun is a better watch all the way through. Good job to Seiko. All right. I'm going to stop. I have to go back out and mow some more. I've got probably 40 minutes left, assuming the grass is dry enough now. It hasn't rained in a week, and you would have thought. But in the morning, it's risky. But it's going to be hot. I'm already miserable thinking about it. But life is pain. You just get used to it. Thank you for watching the live stream. I will plan to be back next Saturday. What topic? An evergreen one, more new watches. As usual, I have no idea because I usually start thinking about it the Thursday before. But until then, hope you all have a really good weekend and take care.